The Inspired Insights podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered health advice. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice.
Please note that this podcast may contain discussions on sensitive topics such as mental illness, suicide, and substance use. If you are experiencing a behavioral health crisis or need support, please contact the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling 988 or visiting www.988lifeline.org. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, hi.
Hi. I am Soren Peterson, a high school student, and this is...
Chris McGlonn's back with you all. We have a special guest. Charlotte Warren is here. Hi, Charlotte.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Charlotte, you and I have known each other probably a couple years now in some of my other social work roles with some of the work you do in our State House. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Awesome.
Let our listeners and viewers know who you are.
Thank you. So, as everybody said, my name is Charlotte Warren, and I serve now as a lobbyist. I never thought I would hear myself say those words, but I am working with Moose Ridge Associates, which is a lobbying firm in the state of Maine, led by and founded by Betsy Sweet.
He's awesome.
Who's awesome. And Laura Harper and John Hennessy, also awesome members of our group. And so that is what I do now in the legislature, is I'm doing mostly advocating on behalf of mental health and substance use disorder systems is a lot of the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then I do a lot of also sort of peripheral social justice work, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What I love about you and your Moose Ridge team is I feel like you represent and are a voice for the partners, the agencies, the organizations, associations that you represent there. And you help us with some strategy, and you help kind of map out, what are we looking to get done? Does it align with, and if so, what are the other partners we can bring in? And then how do we move it forward? You are so skilled at laying out strategy.
Thank you. And part of that, I appreciate that. Part of that is that I was on the other side for 8 years, right? So I started my consulting firm in 2012, and my consulting firm is just called C. Warren Consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing some legislative work starting in about 2007, 2008, when I joined the Maine Women's Lobby.
Yeah.
And so I had that sort of experience, and then I figured out, all right, I'm going to try to get there and be one of those. I need to have a vote.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can kind of see what things needed to be fixed. And I spent some time kind of on the outer edges trying to get things fixed. And I was like, I got to go get there. I got to go have a vote. So I ran, I got elected, and I ended up serving for 8 years in the Maine legislature. And I think it really has allowed me to see the process, both, first as the associate director of an organization, and we had a lobbyist, right? And then doing some direct work on my own, then serving as a legislator, and now coming full circle back into the building with a whole bunch of sort of new experience also about what those different roles are.
Yeah, and new relationships.
Yeah.
What years did you serve?
I got elected in 2014.
Okay.
And so I started my service in 2015, the January of 2015, and I served for 8 years. So until, what is that?
23.
23.
So through this first half of COVID.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I did 2 years of chairing the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee 100% over Zoom.
Wow.
And I will tell you, I thought I had stamina good attention before doing 12-hour Zoom hearings.
Yeah. Oh, I cannot
Zoom
imagine.
really allowed me to learn a little bit about my skills.
Yeah.
I think it allowed a lot of us to learn about our skills. We all had to sort of lean in a different way.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, like from when you got in to as you left, did you notice any dramatic shifts in the tides, the vibes, the political discord
No, 100%.
in just 8 years' time?
100%. I've always been somebody that tells the truth no matter, right? Literally no matter, right? Even if people don't want to hear it. I believe in my truth, and I believe in my right to share it.
Yeah.
And and part of my work is to help other people believe in their truth and believe in their value to share it. Right. And so I've always been just sort of 100% who I am. And I saw the reaction to who I am change as the world outside of the legislature changed. And specifically, I can talk about specific examples of where my sort of behavior and what I was sharing on social media and my beliefs, I don't feel like they really changed.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I sort of became a target in some ways of what we saw change outside.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I started as an elected official. Now, I also want to say that I served as mayor and I served on a city council for 12 years. So I have a long time of sort of public service. And in that process of serving, I really experienced something outside of the work shift. And we all experienced it. The way we treat our elected officials has changed. The way we treat each other has changed. What we agree on for facts has changed. Right. So that I saw.
Oh,
a
I
real
can't
shift.
wait. I want to get into that more. Soren, this is our first guest episode of the season.
Indeed.
And I have already done a terrible job keeping us
On track.
on track. That's usually like inspired insight, right?
Yes.
What is your inspired insight of the week?
So, focusing on this idea of advocacy and the importance of political involvement, I was thinking about the defeatism that I see in a lot of my colleagues at school, particularly around politics. And then I look back into history and recognize, for example, the social movements in the 60s and 70s were led primarily by motivated young people. And I'm not seeing that in my current generation. I see a lot of politically interested young people, but these young people are hanging out in online spaces where they're not taking tangible, pragmatic action.
Yeah.
And I myself am part of this. I sit at home and I pontificate and I consider policy, and then I make no tangible action.
Right. And then you nap for 7 hours and
So my insight would be for young people to start thinking about how they can get involved with policy in a tangible sense. Rather than marinating in ideas, engaging in actions.
I can't wait to check back in with you when we're done our time with Charlotte to see if you have some ideas on what you might offer.
That's what I'm very excited for today's episode.
Yeah. So my insight, and then I'll end with you because I want to follow up with some of these things. What actually reminded me that we haven't done our insights of the week conversation yet is when you were talking about the way people treat elected officials and even each other has changed. And so our listeners know, and Soren knows all too well, that I often look to one of my heroes, pop culture heroes, for insight. None other than Miss Taylor Swift. And So I'm in my Taylor cardigan, and I'm wearing my insight of the week under my cardigan, and it's a quote Taylor used in her Time Magazine Person of the Year 2023 article, and she just very casually dropped this little nugget in the interview and carried on, and I come back to it over and over again. And what I love about it is, on the surface, it may not sound kind, and Taylor is absolutely kind, but I think it just sums up everything so well. And it's this: trash takes itself out every single time. And it's this reminder that we don't have to take a swing at every pitch that's thrown at us. We don't have to spend a lot of time putting on the body armor and planning the defense. Sometimes just the knowledge that the folks that are taking swings at us or throwing lobs at us aren't worthy of the return energy. It'll take care of itself. It takes itself out eventually. And so that's kind of one of my thoughts.
I think that is a very useful insight in most contexts, and I agree with it broadly. But I think, like, on the topic of American policy and politics, a lot of people expected the garbage that is currently head of the federal government to have taken himself out many moons ago.
Yeah.
And yet he remains in a position of power. And I think that expectation that we will continue to see positive movement without action is something that has done a lot of harm to social advocacy in the last few years.
Yeah.
But I broadly agree with that insight.
And we're going to get back to that because I know exactly what you're picking up from that.
Yeah.
We will get back to that. Charlotte, inspired insight for our week.
Well, yes, you actually gave me the inspired insight when we were on our call a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And you shared resistance plus resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have got to put those two things together and not separate them.
They have to be.
They have to be.
And you will remember that was one of our closing sentiments from last season, is how do we become part of both the resistance and prioritize resilience?
Yes.
And so we were talking about that being a theme as we come into some other activities we're doing. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? How do we balance this need, especially now, this need to do something and fight back and prioritize wellness and self-care?
I was thinking of it on my drive up this morning, and as everybody else, we have a lot of, I have a lot of stuff roaming around in my head right now that's, I'm not ready to prognosticate about what happened in November and who did what wrong.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right now, I'm sitting back and I'm kind of watching and I'm gathering information. And one of the things that Vice President Kamala Harris said during her race is a lot of young women out there not aspiring to be humble. Right? She said, many of us aren't aspiring to be humble.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me because I'm not aspiring to be humble to make a bunch of other people feel comfortable either.
Right.
But I'm also not aspiring to be a martyr.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I do not aspire to be Superwoman.
Right.
Right? We do a lot of that, like, I'm doing everything. No, I don't aspire to doing everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and somebody educated me years ago around racial justice and anti-supremacist movements, especially in the field of social work, that to rest is to be part of the resistance. To rest and gather and pause and collect thoughts is pushing back against supremacist culture, where it's drive and produce and more all the time. To rest
Yes.
is to be part of resistance.
And it's that trickster energies is one way it's
Yeah.
referred to, right? That trickster energy of, maybe my ancestor, just to keep what you're saying, maybe my ancestor, an African-American person in the field, couldn't rest, could not stop from picking the cotton because the master was there with the whip, right? But that person of color now,
Yeah.
they don't rest, right?
Right.
And we talk about it a lot, right? We talk about these, what was it? What people were talking about, like quitting. What was that term?
Quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah.
Right? I say to people all the time, you get to decide how much you get paid an hour.
Yeah.
You just work less, and
Yeah.
how much you get paid an hour goes up.
Right.
Like there's that tricky energy or trickster energy that I think we all need to be using as part of the resistance, right?
Yeah.
Because it's true, capitalism and the patriarchy and all of that, it'll just grind us right down into the ground.
Yeah, and I thank you for saying that, because I just mentioned this to you recently as well. For my husband and I, part of our intentionality of rest is to unplug the news. Like you and I have talked about this. I said, when it became clear in November what was happening, I said to my husband, I looked at him and I said, I can't do what we did from 2016 to 2020. I cannot live like that again. So I need to figure out how to give myself permission to not scroll all of it.
Yeah.
All day long and marinate in what are they doing? What are they changing? What's whoever that is, I can't live like that again. You, my friend, don't necessarily have that luxury, especially in our state politics, but also federally. Like, this is your job. Your job is to be aware. So what are you doing to balance that with this idea of resilience and rest?
Well, for one, I really do feel like right now, what's happening federally is completely beneath all of us.
Yeah. Trash.
I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in it, right? I'm not paying attention to it. And the reason I'm not paying attention to it is, although, I think people do see it as my job, I'm not lobbying in Congress.
Yeah. Federally. Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not my job.
Yeah.
And what we're going to see this administration do is throw a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Flood the zone.
Yeah.
And not everyone, some people are going to run around responding to all of those things.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't want to critique what anybody else is doing. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
It's beneath me.
Yep.
And that is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not paying attention to it. And when the call for resistance comes, I suspect people know how to get in touch with me.
That's right.
Right? And when my trans brothers and sisters need me to stand up and take action, you can bet I'm part of it.
Yeah.
Right? And all the other things, you can bet I'm part of it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I need to be glued to my cell phone or allowing that information into my house.
Yeah.
I no longer listen to public radio.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't listen to public radio is I would not let a dumb rapist into my house.
Right.
And I'm not going to listen to one inside my house.
Right.
And so
Voluntarily. Right.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, I miss my public radio, but right now I have to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anything that Charlotte Warren can control about what's happening in D.C. right now.
That's right.
Now, if there's an action activity that we need to take, sign me up. I'm the first one there.
And we'll know about it, right? Like, I read to Derek, like, one of our concerns is obviously around the targeting doesn't even seem to be the right word anymore, but the prioritization of making the LGBTQ community, especially trans and gender diverse, gender expansive community, making them the enemy, making them the them.
Yeah.
And what I've said to Derek is, and we're in complete agreement, I promise y'all, if he or they do something that's going to impact our marriage, that's going to impact our rights,
Yeah.
they're not going to sneak it through.
Nope.
We're not going to be asleep at the wheel and wake up tomorrow and suddenly our marriage has been dissolved. I am connected with enough folks. I get enough email from all of these organizations. We're going to know. So I don't have to be front and center in front of my screen, watching and waiting and scrolling, like patrolling the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. It's not going to sneak through. The other zone flooding that's happening, I honestly don't give a shit. I cannot be bothered. And I love how you said it's beneath.
Totally beneath me.
I don't need to know every confirmation hearing, every executive order. Now, in my world, I am paying attention to some of those orders, especially gender affirming care stuff and what's going on with diversity, equity, and include, like my livelihood.
Absolutely.
But that's sort of the compartment. Like, I'll focus on this so I don't have to focus on the other 99% of it.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like what you guys are speaking to is the importance of picking and choosing our battles
100%.
when we have limited both cognitive and social resources.
That's right. What's your hill that you're prepared to die on?
Yeah.
And then how do you bunker and protect that thing?
Yeah. And in being passive, we can like be part of a resistance simply through not participating in an organization that we disagree with.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or not watching. Like, I get really frustrated that all of our news venues are doing exactly what they want by feeding it to us and jumping on it.
It's so true.
And I just don't want to give it my energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also what I'm hearing is I think politics on both sides of the aisle has become increasingly reactionary, especially on the right. And what we're seeing right now is a massive push from the reactionary right to dismantle the systems that leftists have attempted to provide the United States. And now what we need to do is sit, wait, observe, and know when to become reactionary in response.
Strategy.
Yeah.
Craft strategy. I mean, you and I talk about this on and off camera all the time. Like, we get frustrated that it feels like there's this rollover mentality, like we lost, so licking wounds. And I get frustrated with, for me, it's drawing the line of what is rest and what is apathy and just shrugging shoulders and walking away from it.
I think that's a very difficult line to draw. Even in this conversation, I'm like, is that the greatest choice when you guys are saying some of your like passive whatever, but I've never been active in a political sphere. I spend a lot of my time thinking about it, but I have never taken action outside of some of the public speaking engagements I've been involved in. And this.
This is big, though. I also want to say this doesn't believe it yet. Yeah.
Tell us
keep
more.
going, because this is what you're doing. This is action. But keep going.
Yeah. I think that a lot of young people are sitting on the apathy side of things, whereas a lot of older individuals or people who have been more politically involved previously are tired as a dog trying to fight battles for other people.
Right.
Right? So it's part of what I was thinking with my inspired insight. It is time for young individuals to take a step forward, because I feel like young people, although they don't have the resources of older individuals, we are reformers. We are able to view critically the world around us in a way that people who have existed in that world for an extended period of time can't, right? And we need to leverage that in order to advocate for new policy solutions.
So what does that look like for you today? Like, what would a collective uprising of young voices, what would that tangibly look like? And it's okay not, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about, and I forget the year, the March for Our Lives group after the is it Columbine? That group,
Yeah, I can't
that
remember
that group of young people said, and they were they were in DC. They were marching and organizing marches all across
Was that
the country.
Parkland?
Parkland.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was Parkland.
Columbine was in the night.
Yeah. So, yeah, isn't that sad? They all blur together. That's another topic as well. But that felt, for the first time, it really felt like here are young people doing something. And they got torn to shreds, right?
Yeah.
We knew they would. They got torn to shreds. But that looked like young people doing something. And arguably they did. They drew a lot of attention to it. But I don't know, short of like taking to the streets, what does that look like now?
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking too, because no legislation has been enacted at a federal level to introduce some amount of gun reform.
Right.
As a result of that, there have been no concrete actions to attempt to mitigate or reduce school shootings.
Right.
And I think that's some of the conflict that I have, especially like with my valuation of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Spreading awareness is action, but it's not results.
Yeah.
Right?
Let me challenge you on that. Because I think it gets back to what Charlotte was saying and what your mom and I tell you all the time. Like, you giving voice to all of the topics we're talking about is action. Is it measurable in the sense of ballot box? Maybe not yet, but I'm curious what other metrics we might think about where action and results, like what are the other ways to measure results? And is it changing minds? Is it shifting hearts? Is it only passing bills or getting people elected? So what are the metrics when you think about results? Are you thinking in terms of here's the new policy, here's the new law, or here's the person sitting in the office?
Well, okay. I think as a result of us living in a democracy, to some extent, swaying other individuals' opinions is results because that has a tangible translation
To
in
vote.
policy.
Yep.
Right? To votes. However, I think that the only time when we're going to see tangible results is when those people that we convince go out and vote or go out and get involved in a movement that results in policy shifting.
Yeah.
So when these things become visible is when it manifests in shifted policy.
Yeah.
But until that is the case, our action is not doing anything, right? And
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear what you think. As a policymaker, the duality of like sort of the utility of advocacy.
So important. So important. And that's the thing, Soren. You showing up and being who you are is so big. It is so important, right? So let me tell you what I mean about that in presence of the legislature. Hearing different people's stories, being able to connect some policy that we're trying to change or destroy or create or modify, it all needs to be accompanied by humanity. What makes it real? It can't just be, theoretical discussions, right? It has to be based in our people, our communities, our collections, right, of groups. It has to be seen in order to affect. And that's why I think, doing this podcast, sending a letter to the editor, reaching out to a lawmaker, all of those things, and just even being who you are and sharing who you are is advocacy, right?
And resistance.
And resistance and important.
Yep.
Yes, and resistance and important. And here's another thing that's resistance. And this is one I'm trying to get other people to agree with me on. So let's see if you guys agree with. I think another form of resistance is using our own wisdom and not needing to do, and maybe this is just something that we as lefty progressives do.
Right.
We don't need to be surprised again.
Yeah.
That's the part that is irritating me about this more than anything else. Is people like, oh my God, did you see what he did?
Yeah, right.
It's expected. This is a pattern of things.
I don't know why it irritates me so badly.
Yeah.
But it really irritates me.
Yeah.
It's like we give up our own personal agency, and our personal agency of, I know stuff.
Yeah.
I know what he did. I know who he is.
Right.
And if I act surprised by it, aren't I like going back on like what I was trying to say the whole time?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's that it's disingenuous. And it's that performative pearl clutching of, can you believe that? And those of us in the queer community on November blank, the day after, when we woke up, those of us in this community looked at each other and said, mark my words.
Yeah.
Day one.
Exactly what I said. Yeah.
Mark like my word. And sure enough, day one. And like it's even now cliche for Project 2025, but it's a thing, right? It literally mapped out.
Yep.
And those of us that have been targeted by those policies and politics for decades, we knew. We knew what was coming. He told us. They told us.
Yes, like this is something that voters have been aware of. And I was talking to one of my friend's parents who did vote for Donald Trump. And he was like, why is all of this happening? I don't know what's going on. And I'm like,
And you want to be like,
this man took a bat out of a box, went and winded up. And now you're shocked when you got hit in the head?
right.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
Right.
That's such a good way to say it.
Right.
You sat there and you were like, yeah, come.
Right.
And-
Well, and I would suggest the moment that box was checked on the ballot, the bat was already pulled back
Yeah.
mid-swing
Yeah.
and coming our way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so this idea that you are surprised, I agree.
And I don't know. And I try to be patient about it because I know that people in my own circle just love the drama.
Yeah.
They love to
Yeah.
talk about the bad stuff, right?
Right.
And I'm the kind of person, like, if there's a pile of dog shit over there, I'm looking for the flowers.
Right. That's right.
And that's just my own personality,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't want to, I'm not interested in spending so much time, filling whatever that
Wallowing.
is, wallowing, talking about it, sharing it.
That's right.
It's that I can't.
Because that's resilience and resistance.
It is.
That's pulling it all together, I think.
It's sitting back into your own wisdom,
Yeah.
right? And sitting back into your own truth of knowing some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that you and your colleagues taught me years ago was the importance of strategy and planning. That, and I think it speaks a little bit, Soren, to what you were saying about it's like what are the tangible results? Like some of this stuff is measured in years, and so the conversation we have today might not result in policy change for 2 more election cycles, but we started it, right? The groundwork was laid,
Right.
and it's the idea of the long game. And that, when we had these conversations years ago, it equally frustrated me,
Yes.
but also got me thinking about possibility. And how do we then redefine the metric of the conversation we're having today might not yield results for years.
Right. It's almost like dropping pennies in a well.
Yeah, right.
Right? You have to drop a lot of pennies in the well before they get so high you can see them above the water line. Doesn't mean the pennies aren't there,
Yeah, I love that analogy too.
right?
Yeah.
They're still in the well.
Yeah,
You just have to drop a lot of pennies for them to start coming up above
yeah,
the water. And for me, it's,
yeah.
when I graduated college in 1994, young, queer, trying to figure out my place in the world, right? And I was part of an organization at UMF. It was a gay straight organization, and we were working on like having civil rights,
Right, right.
having access to civil rights,
Right.
which meant that we couldn't be fired for being gay or lose our housing for being gay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My first job right out of college was as a teacher,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so I was very concerned about my employment and my housing. And so and sort of was working on that policy fight. And then in my brain, look how fast we got to marriage equality.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very rapid shift.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but what I needed to remember was all the years,
All the other pennies that have been for.
all those pennies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that two things. One, we define our win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We define our win, right? And that was like one of the first lessons I learned in policymaking. There is not, the win cannot be, we got all the green lights or we got all the red lights, right? It has, the voting in the chambers, right? It has to be something different than that, because we're not going to get all the green lights on everything in 1 year.
That's right. That's right. Right. It's that long game that the actions we have now today might impact some of those green lights 2, 4, even 6 years from now. You know, one of the episodes that Soren and I did last season was an episode we kind of called Generations of Pride, and it was for the lived experiences of 4 male-bodied folks representing different eras. And one of my favorite mentors, Frank Brooks, was with us. And I know you know Frank too. And, you know, Frank talked about living through the AIDS epidemic and then building the organization that is now what we know as Equality Maine, and then what happened in the state of Maine after marriage equality was passed. And folks just kind of went, yep, done. And Equality Maine said, and re-energized and revamped that. But I think about all those pennies in that well that you reference and all the wishes that every one of those pennies represents and how it takes the collective energy of piling up before you actually see it. And I think what I'm hearing over and over again that you know all too well, Soren, as a queer young person in public school, is the amount of people that I consider really dear friends who are so disconnected from this idea of queer rights, not starting and stopping at marriage. And how much is now being talked about in terms of whether we're talking gender affirming care or diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the new face of the gay rights movement is really the trans non-binary young people. That you all are the new face of what we knew as marriage equality. And so your passion for change and tangible, a metric of change, I get it. Because I think I hear you saying you were there. And I wonder your thoughts, Soren, on being the new thing that the right and the left are moving around the chessboard.
I think that minority groups have consistently been used in politics
Absolutely.
as a pawn.
Yep. Since the beginning of time.
Yes. And I have a lot of opinions on the place of social dynamics in politics.
Yeah.
I like to focus more on the socioeconomic end of things.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm recognizing primarily in especially the right and their crusade against transgender individuals is a simple lack of understanding of reality.
Right.
They have created a straw man that they can attack, which serves to reinforce my point that we are pawns we are in a political argument.
Totally.
Straw person.
The non-binary straw person. Yeah.
Yeah. As a young person, I think in viewing all of this, it's easy to feel misunderstood by the institutions around you, and we obviously are. But because of that, I think a lot of young people are incentivized to not interact with those institutions. But in order to introduce the change that we desire, we need to interact with those institutions.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of like defining our victory. Where is the goal?
Right.
There is no goal. We will never achieve utopia, but we can always push from where we are to that ideal, right?
And as Charlotte said earlier, showing up in the world as your authentic self is a way you interact with those institutions, it as a form of resistance. I think about Laverne Cox's quote, like, I'm not interested in being erased. And queer people, we ain't going anywhere.
Right.
So you can scrub the website.
Yeah.
You can take the words out of the grant applications. You can delete the data. But every day that you, Charlotte, every day we show up in the world as our authentic self, it is a giant middle finger to all of those institutions who seek to erase.
Yeah.
I think something that I find so distasteful on the social right is this desire to purify culture towards an arbitrary ideal.
That's right.
Whereas I think a lot of the social movements that I see on the left are an attempt to have common culture be indicative of the actual social conditions on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? And allow individuals who are existing to be shown in the common eye. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of people on the right and a lot of the social movements on the right focus on creating a purified mainstream in which only certain social conditions can be shown.
Yeah.
And I think through that they are abstracting reality and attempting to obscure issues for their own gain.
1,000%.
But that's, I don't know. I'm just commenting on the right now. This is I'm not.
No, but it's so true.
No.
So true.
Well, I think you're highlighting, Soren, that part of advocacy is also understanding some of the dynamics at play, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to live in Augusta or watch every Zoom hearing. You don't have to be boots on the ground day in and day out to understand the issue and to take a role in the strategy to define what your win is good. You get to lay out the strategy at the same time you get to define your win.
Regarding tangible action and boots on the ground, even though, as we agree, it's not necessary for every individual to be engaging with, I'd be curious to hear how you, Charlotte, first got involved in politics and what sorts of organizations other young people can strive to become involved with.
Yeah.
It's such a good question. And I sometimes wonder myself, like, what sparked this?
Yeah.
When did it start? I remember well, first of all, I think just inherently because of who I am and who I was as a child, my mother is a very born-again Christian person. She's very evangelical. I was raised in a church that's Free Methodist, so they're not just Methodists, like they're like one step
Leveled up Methodist.
They're leveled up Methodists.
Yeah.
They're born again. It's the tent revival, the whole thing. Like we had church camp, so just trying to give you the picture of where I came from. And I was born a badass. I just was born this way. I was.
Own it.
Yeah, I was. And my mom, God bless her, she really, we have a great relationship now. I'm 54.
Yeah.
My mother is 78, and we have a great relationship. I got to keep her inside the lines sometimes,
That's right.
And she's open to that. She knows she's got to be kept inside the lines sometimes. But I was a real tomboy.
Yeah.
And so I sort of had to start advocating early on behalf of myself. And somewhere along the line, I got the knowledge, thank you to whoever I'm saying thank you to. I got the knowledge that just because my mom thought I was wrong and the church thought I was wrong, I didn't think I was wrong.
Yeah.
I thought they were wrong.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, I knew as a young person that I did not want to be judgy. And that I remember having the term, I'm not going to judge until I've walked in your moccasins. I don't know where I got the term from.
Yeah.
But I remember being very young and sitting back, and so that sort of informed. You get the picture of like how I sort of came, and then I sort of just became this person that had experienced some real unfairness in my childhood. My sister is very feminine. She's very traditional. My brother is very much a boy. And then here I was in the middle, and I'm very much a woman, but I wasn't what my mother thought I should be, right? And so I sort of became this one-woman show of like, I'm okay, even though you don't like me this way.
Wow. Where did that confidence
I have
come?
no idea. I think part of it is I had a dad and a nana who believed in me.
Yeah.
And they thought I was the best thing they ever saw.
Yeah.
They thought I was the best thing they ever saw. So you can make it through that resilience. Resilience happens even if you just have one person who believes in you.
Right.
Right? And so I have this like, I can feel unfairness in my body, and I will not abide it.
Yeah. You can't sit with that.
I can't sit with it.
Yeah.
I can't sit with it. It has gotten me into unbelievable trouble in my life. And I've learned really great lessons from that trouble. And I don't have regrets about the trouble I created.
Yeah.
Because I learned that it was, in order to be true to myself and be my authentic self, I was going to have to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times you don't have a choice.
Yes.
How do you balance the feeling of when you are sitting with that injustice, right? When you are watching people you care about harmed, how do you balance that with recognition that there's no immediate gratification in the work that you do? Again, like we said, some of it's going to come years from now.
Right.
How do you balance the need for change with knowing the strategy it's going to take?
I lean into my own wisdom.
Yeah.
And my own wisdom tells me that movements are not just 12 years long.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I really want to understand the struggle, I should go back and try to do a little learning about what Black women have gone through in this country.
Take perspective. Yeah.
Right? So I take a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
But also, like, I try to keep myself in the world that I live in as opposed to the world I wish I lived in.
Yeah. Staying grounded.
I'm grounded, right? Like I want to just I'm not surprised by things because when somebody shows me who they are, I believe them the first time, right? Maya Angelou, I live by that. But I also spend a lot of time, I think I talk with my hands a lot. I spend a lot of time observing.
Yeah.
And then trusting my own observations. Are mine the same as yours? No. Are mine maybe not the same as 50%? Not.
Yeah.
Still true, still valid, still here.
Yeah.
Still here, still having a hell of a time.
Yeah. That's
right? Still having a hell of a time. And so I think, I don't know if that helps answer your question of how I do it, but the work is never going to be done, right? I'm never going to be like, there, right? Got it all taken, right? But I find so much joy in the trying.
Yeah.
And the joy in the meeting, the people along the journey. I got to tell you, this work of trying to create change, it has exposed me to most unbelievable people. And then I just have like really big self-care strategies.
Yeah.
Right? And now we even got people judging self-care.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. People are like this so, and it's like, I just want everyone to have their own self-care.
What works for you?
Right? I mean, let's trust that people are experts on their own lives.
Yeah.
And that if we can really encourage people to get to their own wisdom,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Self-care becomes so much easier
Yeah.
when you know yourself and
That's
you
right.
know what you need. And, I mean, my friends pick on me so much about certain things, right? I don't go to a lot of things that everybody else goes to. I say, some people have FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
I have JOMO, joy of missing out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And everyone's got, some sort of theory about what, I need a connection.
Yeah.
You can't do this. You should do this. And I'm like, you take care of your self-care.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing all right.
There's
here.
that confidence again.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
confidence.
You take care of your own. I know what I need.
Yeah.
You know what you need. You know what you need. Right. And so I think that's got to be a big piece of it.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is a lot of conviction and confidence, and the importance of that in resilience. We need to believe in ourselves and the validity of our ideas in order to allow them to change the world around.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that, Soren, because I would like I'm just like in awe of the confidence that you and you radiating that confidence. I like sit in it and I feel like my posture, like, yeah, we got this. It's like, it's infectious. So thinking about your question about resources then, Charlotte, what would you give folks Soren's age, even younger, if somebody who's not quite 18 yet, so that idea of a vote doesn't quite exist yet, but they want to get involved, what would you suggest to school-age youth? What can they do?
Reach out to somebody you trust who will invite you in. And I think a lot of people in Augusta or at Bangor City Hall or Brewer City Hall or wherever the sort of seats of government are, right? We do a lot of there's a lot of talking about who should do what and what it looks like. But there's not a lot of just like, come join.
Right. Have a conversation. Yeah.
Come be part. And I think there's this expectation that everyone's going to like figure it out of their own. And really my thing is like, would you like to come be at the State House a day with me? Right? I say that to young people all the time.
Is that an invitation?
Yes, it was.
Anytime.
Soren's eyes went, oh.
Come spend the day with me. And I do mean that, right? Like I, when I was mayor of Hollowell and we were trying to figure out a way to get people to come to meetings or be involved, right? And I really saw it as, and some people I was working with really saw it as, we need them and they're not doing it, and I really was like, well, what are we doing wrong?
Right.
It's my responsibility as mayor,
Right.
to figure out how to invite those people in.
Right.
How do I do that, right? And so I think it's on me and it's on all of us to figure out a way to not sit around and go, why aren't they showing up? But to figure out a way to go and get them.
Yeah.
And to bring them with me. And what I say to people all the time is, you want to come to the State House? You let me know, I'll meet you down at the screeners. Because that's like the biggest thing, is like just getting them to the building the first time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a scary place for the first time.
Yeah, and not understanding, I know this was true for me, not understanding the process. And I use that term process, like, I don't just mean like how bills are created. I mean, how do you get in?
Yeah.
What are the rules? Like, do you have to dress a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way? Am I allowed to bring my mug of coffee? Like, what are the rules? And
100%.
to take away like the mystery of what happens. And what I learned very early on, it's just another place.
Yes.
It's just another place.
And it's another place that you own.
Right.
And that's what I try to say all the time to people. That State House is your house.
Yeah.
It does not belong to the lawmakers. It does not belong to the governor. It does not belong to the lobbyists. It belongs to the people of Maine.
Yeah.
But I have people say to me, you know, when I'm like, okay, we're going to go in this public hearing or we're going to go in this work. And they're like, are we allowed to be in there?
Yeah.
You're not only allowed to be in there, you're expected to be there.
Yeah.
This is yours.
Yeah.
This is yours,
Yeah.
right? So I would say to anyone that's a young person or even an older person who wants to get involved but doesn't know what to do, reach out to somebody who's already doing it.
Yeah. And
Could I come along with you?
Yep.
Could I go to that meeting? Right?
Yep.
And do it and go the first time. And the first time will be the hardest time
Yeah.
because you have all those questions,
Right.
right? And of course you do. It's a place of a lot of rules and pomp and circumstance.
Yes, it's the pop and that for me is the most intimidating part. It's the positive, and when you go there and you realize that there's not as much pomp or circumstance that in real life than there was up here. Like the pomp and the circumstance I thought I was gonna see,
Yeah,
totally absent. Like it's just another place.
exactly.
Yeah, I hope you do show up, and we're gonna talk more about this.
Oh, we'd have so much fun.
You would have so much fun, and what you would bring back to your peer group, and what
Mm-hmm.
that could be the next, like, I'll rent a bus.
Yeah.
I will pay to rent a bus to have you and your peeps show up.
Yeah.
And for me, again, being your authentic selves and being in the stands so that you can't be erased, that you're not out of sight, out of mind of the people making the laws.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is perfect.
Yep. And I have something to offer, right?
Yeah.
For all young people, I have something to offer. And I just want to say, this world is yours. You guys are going to get this, right? This is yours, and you get to shape it.
That's right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it is.
And we,
Flaming pile of.
No.
listen,
Sorry.
we need you to shape it. You and I have talked about this too. We need you to shape it for sure. Charlotte, thank you so much for this. This was like amazing. Again, your inspiration and your confidence
I
is
hope it was helpful.
it's infectious. It absolutely is. So I want to round back to you as we close. Does action feel different? Does tangible results? Is it starting to feel a little different?
I spend a lot of time engaging with like system builders like Marx, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of like very extreme like alias ideas in my mind,
Yep.
right? And I think what this conversation has done for me has drawn me back to sort of like, what do tangible results look like? And how can I act in a tangible way in order to forward progress rather than a like semi-concrete ideal that is
Yeah.
way off in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I think this has made me a lot more energized. It's very energized.
I can see it in your face for sure.
But I don't know if my ideas around what progress looks like have shifted.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
We'll take the bus. We'll get the bus. We'll fill it. We'll take it. We'll hang out there for a day. And my sense is the energy that you pick up from an experience like that might help you start rethinking about what are my metrics? And how am I going to define my win? What's a win for me?
I love it.
Do you have any words of wisdom, parting thoughts for us?
The words of wisdom are coming from what Soren said, and I just need to circle back to it because, Soren, you said it so clearly, and I don't think you really even realized it, that one of the ways we're going to change, to make social change, is by changing ourselves and each other. Because we're living, why are we living? This is my question. Why are we surrounded by people who don't think what's happening in DC is beneath them?
Right. Right.
What's happening with us as people? How do we see ourselves? How do we treat ourselves?
Yeah.
Why are we willing to put up with certain things?
Yeah.
And I would say that it has to do with the way we're treating ourselves.
Yeah.
We give a lot of space for a lot of bad behavior.
That's right. That's right. We give people permission to treat us those ways, and then we internalize that as if it's an expectation, as if this is what I deserve. So we collectively need to just rise up and let that shit roll.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What I sort of got from that is, to a great extent, hierarchy is enforced by the people at the bottom of it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And in order to reject that hierarchy, we need to reject what is inside of us that is aiding in the enforcement of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. What is behind the simple statement of I will not comply?
Yeah. Yep.
I won't be complicit.
That's right.
Right. And that's what that thing is of every time unfairness.
Yeah.
Even when people are like, oh my God, here's Charlotte again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's kind of, again, full circle moment of getting back to this idea of rest and resilience, that being complicit does not look like rest. They're two different pieces. So I can be resting and still be just as fired up about all that's happening, even though it might not look on the outside like I'm fired.
100%.
Well, this has been awesome. I thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation.
Well, anytime. And
This was delightful.
next time,
Yeah.
folks might be coming to you. So on behalf of the podcast and our listeners and Inspired Insights, thank you so much. I've been Chris McLaughlin.
I've been Soren Peterson.
And I've been Charlotte Warren.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
The Inspired Insights podcast has been brought to you by Inspired Consulting Group, LLC.
Edited and produced by Amanda Seidel and Derek Harder.
Marketing support for the Inspired Insights podcast by Elizabeth Keenan. Music by Derek Harder.
Please visit www.inspiredcg.com to learn more. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved.